And now, suspense.
That'll, I guess, segue into the next topic of artsy movies that make people kind of feel a bit more like pompous in a way, like A24.
Oh,
No
there it
hate,
is. Yeah,
no,
A24.
no hate against A24 because I really like a lot of their titles. I've been hip to A24 from like the fucking beginning. I'm an A24 hipster. I was onto A24 before a lot of fucking people were.
What
Before
was
it
that
even
first
got
one? Was it Moonlight? Was that the one?
yeah, like Moonlight, and there was like which one was it? There was another one too. That's like very early A24 when people didn't even know who they were. And I was like, oh, this is a pretty good studio. Like they put out a lot of really cool, like and unique shit that I like.
Mm-hmm.
And then it got bigger and bigger, and obviously they're gonna start to draw more of a crowd, and then people are gonna. It's like I said, fandoms with brand loyalty. It goes back to brand loyalty with the fandoms. There's a brand loyalty for A24. There's people who watch.
Oh my god, yeah.
Who praise anything and everything A24, even if it's garbage. I don't like that personally, but and I like A24. I like a lot of stuff they do, and then there are people who absolutely hate A24 and they refuse to watch any of it because they believe it's all like pretentious. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people are like, oh, it's just so pretentious.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And like, I mean, I get that too.
I think
like,
it's
I
the
get it.
fans, a lot of fans who gas it up. I think is like what causes it because a lot of their movies are like horror films or like pseudo horror films or thrillers. You know, a lot of films are or just weird, and so it's like we talked about how a lot of like people who don't like horror will then come into the horror arena only like an A24 and they use that as like a pedestal to put down everything else. You know, it's like it's like, oh, you like that new Chucky show? Ever heard of Midsummer? Like that's a movie, right? Bro. That's a film right there. It's like I like a lot of these movies. Yeah, like I like a lot of them. I have Hereditary on Blu-ray. I just don't like talking about it because it brings like a lot of some of my coworkers are very like that. They don't like a lot of horror thrillers or most movies in general, but they love A24, and that's their perception of what horror should be. So when they watch something else, it's just kind of like they like it because how artsy and indie it is, you know. And so, like, I can't talk about Hereditary or anything because I like that. It's a good movie. I like it. But it's like, I don't want to bring it up because it gets to a conversation where, like, I don't want to dive that deep into it, my guy. Like, and I don't want to talk about Midsummer. I don't like it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And it's like, and the other thing, too, is like, oh, you liked Hereditary, but you don't like Midsummer? Like, that's weird, bro. And I'm like, okay. Like, I liked Hereditary. I think it's very unsettling to watch. Like that's the kind of horror films that I like as movies that make me feel very unsettled. I think it's great, but I can never watch. I could watch it like maybe once every 10 years or something. Like The Exorcist.
I've only ever seen it once, honestly.
Yeah, The Exorcist is my favorite horror movie of all time, but I can only watch it like maybe once every few years because it like to this day like gives me nightmares and like just makes me feel very, very uncomfortable. But it's so amazing. So like with A24. I like that they're doing different things. I like that they go for more like unconventional stuff. I feel like they need to go away from the horror aspect because that's just bringing it down. Because I want a movie like The Lobster. Did you ever see The Lobster? Like stuff like that, just weird shit, like weird stuff like that. That's what I want to see. I don't want to have to watch like, you know, dramatic thrillers and like psychological thrillers all the time. And I'm like, can I get something like weird in your vein, but like different? So like I think with The Northman, that's probably why a lot of people were like, oh, something that isn't horror or like a psychological thriller. So they were like, oh man, this is great, you know, but it's still in that same realm. It's still in the same box. Like I've seen people praise it to hell, like praise A24 to hell. There's like, oh, I've never heard of this movie, but I bought it because it's A24. And I'm like, ew. That's like my face right there. I'm just like, I'm like watching their videos or I'm just like on the phone, like seeing the post and my face straight up like, ew, like, no.
Is that really why you don't like the actors directly? You don't like the story? You don't know anything about it. You just bought it because it's A24.
Yeah, I don't like that. And
I think it's also the air of like, if you're like an MCU fan or like a DC fan, you only like, I guess it's also really cringe. It's like, I'm only watching it because it's DC. I don't want to watch anything else, or I'm only watching it because it's Marvel. I don't know, with A24, it has that air of pretentiousness to it that makes it more unsettling, you know, where you're kind of like you're buying it because you think it's incredibly highbrow and it's artsy. That's why you like it.
But it's an entry artsy films. Like if you go into like, once you start going to like boutique labels like Criterion and crap like that, like I used to get so much hate for like shitting on Criterion because I used to be like, dude, it's very pretentious stuff. Like, I don't really like it.
Mhm.
And then they're like, oh, that's because you don't know art and you're not a real film lover. And it, like, but then you get those other people that are like, oh, if you're a real film lover, you have to love uh Criterion because that's like the basis
Mhm.
of cinema and blah blah. And I'm just like, you know how fucking dumb you sound right now? Like, you know how like pretentious you sound right now? Like,
Mhm.
you're not helping your case. You're actually hurting it because the more you talk, the more I don't want it. Like, and like A24 is right in the middle where it's like it's highbrow and pretentious enough to where like the common movie lover can watch it and be like, oh, I love this is great. And the other highbrow people and artsy people will be like, oh, you like those movies? That's cool, we have something in common.
I know what movie. What movie was it? I told you about it earlier. I thought he was a coworker of mine where, yeah, he only watches like when it comes to horror films, he only ever likes A24 stuff. And
Mhm.
so when when the new Scream came out, I told him like, oh, it's the first Scream they're doing without Wes Craven, and R.I.P. to Wes Craven. And he goes, oh, I didn't know Wes Craven did the original Scream. I'm like, well, yeah, like he directed it, and Kevin Williamson wrote it. And I told you, he said the thing that annoyed me to no end. He said, "Oh, okay." Because yeah, I figured I didn't think Wes Craven could come up with something that creative. He needs somebody else's help to do it. And it's like because he only ever saw Wes Craven as the slasher horror guy who made Nightmare on Elm Street, Hills Have Eyes. So it's like okay, it's like a fucked up thing to say. Like when you mean use like when
It's like
he
a backhanded compliment.
exactly. Oh, of course, it's a good film. No wonder he needs some help. But he also that movie, The Invisible Man. Did you see that new one from like 2019, 2020?
Yeah.
Okay, so the dude who Leigh Whannell, who wrote and directed that, he's the co-creator of Saw, Insidious, and Dead Silence. So
Yeah.
he worked with James Wan a lot. And the same guy, where he saw Invisible Man, he thought it was mind blowing. Right? It's a good movie, but like he thought it blew his mind. I'm like, oh yeah, I like Leigh Whannell. He did Saw, he did the Insidious movies. He goes, he did those movies? It's like, yeah, what why are you so surprised? Why does it matter? They look down on stuff like that,
That's why, like, if I were to bring up like Leprechaun or the Puppet Master
Oh
movies
god.
to anybody like that, they'd just be like, oh, what is that? Because that's what I love, dude.
Leprechaun in the Hood.
I come from the land of the Irish Spring. Dublin's the place where I learned my thing. From the Emerald Isle to your place in the hood, I'm the man of green, come to do no good.
Yeah, Leprechaun. Oh my god, Leprechaun in Space was my shit when I was a kid, dude. I watched that
Movies are so
many
funny.
times. Like, I love those movies.
WWE bought them like 10 years ago. And now the WWE
Yeah,
owns
they made
Leprechaun, I
that
think.
they made that Leprechaun Origins or whatever with
Yeah.
somebody, and then they made a newer one, which actually wasn't bad. It was actually a continuation of the first one. It's supposed to be the same Leprechaun because if you didn't know, every Leprechaun in every movie is a different one because he gets killed in every single movie. So it's a different Leprechaun.
Oh yeah.
And it's played by the same actor, Warwick Davis, but it's a different Leprechaun every movie. It always fascinates me when new studios come up or franchises come up. I just like split everybody in like the film loving community because I remember at a time when it was just like
Mhm.
you could like what you want and it was fine. Or maybe it was never like that. Maybe I just never cared or really thought too much of it. Or because maybe this is like maybe this was like a pre-internet, pre-social media era. But like now it's
Yeah, that's
just
what I think it
so
was.
yeah, now it's just so much easier to voice your opinion or like tear down someone's opinion on stuff. Like it's way too easy. And it's pretty sad. That's why
Mhm.
I I don't know. It's just weird. Like it's kind of why I started to distance myself from a lot of the people that I've met, like that watch movies or whatever. Because like after a while, I start to see like, damn, like a lot of these people are very judgmental and they're very like quick to
Oh
be
yeah.
like, oh, you like A24? That's gross. Or they're like, you don't like A24? What?
Yeah, same here. It's like a lot of people talk about at work. I only talk to like one guy about movies now because he's more so open minded than like most other people. It's like over the last like 3 years, like a lot of different coworkers who came to my department and stuff. So like when I talk to them, yeah, like there's a few of them I talk to, and like they're film buffs, but same thing where they're like the most annoying kind, where it's like they refuse to watch older movies. They like only the newer A24 or indie stuff. It's like annoying. So now I barely even mention
Mhm.
it. It's like I let them bring up a movie. I'll let you know. It's like I'll let them know what I think about it. It's like it's also kind of exhausting too. I guess I've always loved horror. Like I don't know if you know this. I actually love horror more than I love like comic book movies and stuff. It's just that more people like comic book movies, so that's why I talk about them more because I know what the audience likes more. Because I love horror movies. I know a lot more about them, but I gotta have like if I make a video about it, I'd rather make a video that people would actually want to watch as opposed to something that I would only personally watch. I do it every now and again where I'll make a video just for me, but there are like most of the time I don't talk about a lot of stuff just because I know the audience wouldn't really care for it. But like I just love horror, and it's always a topic. It's always really weird amongst people where it's like you either love it or hate it, or you got people who only like the artsy stuff or who look down on everything else. It's very interesting, It's more so annoying. Like they only like the art. It's weird because I don't mind the pretentious stuff. It's like I think it's really fun, It's like I watched a movie called The Lighthouse, not The Lighthouse, The Night House. It's a good movie. The movie itself was good, a little pretentious but not too pretentious, a little artsy, not too artsy. But like I talked to a dude at work about it, and like he just went off on how great it was and amazing it was. I'm kind of like, okay, calm down, guys. It's like sometimes I didn't sign on to I didn't sign on to dive that deep into it. It's like I mentioned, oh yeah, it's pretty cool. Or I also feel like a lot of these newer guys care more about like the themes than the overall like they care about the themes and the message as opposed to the actual quality of it or of the writing and stuff.
For me, like the only time I really go deep into like that and start arguing with someone is if they don't give me valid reasons. Like you could hate whatever you want, and that's fine with me. I was like, I don't care. But once you start like trashing something with like no real like facts to back up or no real like opinions or whatever to back up your statements, that's what I'm just like, well, then you're just a straight up hater.
Like we mentioned, like the whole you don't get it, bro. Like I try to stop doing that now because like it's like you said, I'd rather have them tell me, well, what is it that you don't like about it, and then we can talk about it. Because I just seen people like come in like in the comment section, especially like a year or two ago. They're like, man, stop defending this movie. It's trash. I'm like, well, what's bad about it? Like, tell me what's bad about it, and we can talk about it. It's like, oh, well, the pacing's all slow. Like, it's slow by design. You can not like the pacing, but it's supposed to be a slower paced movie. It's like issues like that. It's like a few things where it's kind of like there's something that movie in particular will just do that like they just don't like, and like I respect that, but at the same time, it's kind of like, is that really a bad thing? It's like the Batman was a slower paced movie. I thought at times it was a little bit too slow paced. Yeah. But it is slow paced by design, So it's like I respect that it is doing a slow methodical story. I personally think it fumbles like halfway through, then it gets better towards the end, Like that's how I explain the pacing issue,